Have you ever wondered what it's like to lose everything? To watch the world you know crumble into dust? To feel like there's no place left for you in the land you once called home? What would you do when the people you trusted turned their backs on you, and the only thing left to hold on to is the desire to survive? For me, survival became a question, not an answer. I grew up in a world full of laughter, a child running through the tall grass, chasing the wind. I remember the sound of the creek flowing, my feet dipping in the cool water, the warmth of the sun kissing my skin. Life was simple then. We were protected by our land, our people. But that world ended the day the soldiers came. They burned our villages, they took our men, our children. They destroyed everything. I remember the night they came, the cries of our people, the screams of my mother. That night, I lost my family, my innocence, and the pain. It doesn't fade. It never fades. We were betrayed, not just by them, but by those who swore to protect us. We thought we had allies. We thought we had a future. But the truth was darker than I could have ever imagined. And now, I was left with only one question. Can I trust anyone again? I left everything behind, my home, my family, the land I grew up on. I had no choice. There was nothing left but the open road ahead, and as I walked away, my heart ached with every step. The world had taken so much from me, but I would survive. That's what I told myself. I had to. I had no other choice. But survival. Survival is a bitter thing when there's nothing left to protect. If you're curious about what happens next, make sure to like, comment, I'm ready, and subscribe. You won't want to miss what's coming. The river was wild that night. The storm had turned the gentle creek into a beast, roaring with fury, pulling everything in its path into the dark. I had been running from everything, my past, my people, my pain. But that night, the river had other plans. I didn't see it coming. One moment, my feet were steady on the bank, and the next, the water took me. It pulled me under, and I fought to keep my breath, my hands clawing at the cold, churning water. My clothes, heavy with the weight of the soaked fabric, made it impossible to stay above the surface. The current was stronger than me, stronger than anything I had ever faced. I couldn't breathe. The air was gone, replaced with the icy grip of the river. And in that moment, I thought I would drown. No one would find me. I would become nothing more than another forgotten soul in the endless wilderness. But then, there was a hand, strong and sure, pulling me from the dark. I didn't think. I just grabbed it. My fingers found something solid, something I could hold on to. I couldn't see his face at first, but I could feel the force in his grip. It was as if this stranger had decided in that instant that I was worth saving. His arms, steady and unyielding, pulled me up through the chaos of the water. My lungs burned for air, my body shivered with cold, but I was alive. For the first time in days, I felt alive. When I finally opened my eyes, I saw him, Caleb Sterling, a cowboy, dressed in soaked clothes, his face hard but with something softer in his eyes. He was the one who pulled me from that river, and I had no idea why. I coughed up the water, gasping for air, feeling the sting in my lungs. His hand was still on me, steadying me, but his touch was a reminder of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Human connection. I couldn't trust it. Not now. Not after everything. I looked up at him, my heart still racing, still unsure if I was dreaming or awake. "Why?" I whispered, my voice barely audible above the sound of the still raging storm. "Why did you save me?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he just looked at me, his expression unreadable. "Anyone would have done the same," he said, his voice steady, but not without a hint of something deeper. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that his actions came from kindness, but I couldn't. Not yet, not after everything I'd seen. "Not everyone," I said, the words slipping from my mouth before I could stop them. "You don't know what it's like, to be like me, to trust no one, to see your people fall, one by one." His gaze softened for a moment, but it didn't matter. His kindness felt like a trap, a promise of safety I had no reason to believe. I had been betrayed too many times to trust easily. I struggled to my feet, shaking from the cold, my heart still in turmoil. "Who are you?" I asked, keeping my distance, my eyes narrowed. "Why did you risk your life for someone like me?" Caleb didn't seem to flinch at my questions, though I could see the weight of my words hit him. "My name's Caleb Sterling. I didn't risk my life for anything. I just saw someone who needed help." The simplicity of his answer made my chest ache. How could he just save me, a stranger, without a second thought? Was it really that simple for him? Could I too just save someone without thinking about the consequences? I couldn't answer him. I couldn't even look at him without questioning his motives. Was he truly different from all the others who had come before him, promising safety only to bring harm? He was a white man, and I had been taught to never trust them. But I was alive, and he had saved me. The storm raged on around us, but in that moment, it felt like the world had stopped. My mind raced, torn between the need to run and the desperate need to understand this man. Why had he chosen to help me? Was there something I wasn't seeing, or was this just another cruel twist of fate? He stepped closer, his hand outstretched, offering me something more than help, something I wasn't sure I was ready to accept. "You'll be all right," he said, his voice gruff but comforting. "We'll find shelter." But I wasn't ready. Not yet. "I don't trust you," I said, the words harsher than I meant them to be. "I don't trust anyone anymore." He didn't say anything at first. His expression didn't change, but I could see the hurt in his eyes. Maybe he wasn't used to being looked at with suspicion, but I had learned the hard way that trust was a currency you didn't give out freely. It had to be earned. "I understand," he said quietly. "You don't have to trust me, not yet, but I'll keep you safe, as long as you need." I didn't know what to make of him. He wasn't like the others. His words were simple, but they held something I couldn't quite grasp. Something I wasn't ready to believe. I had been running for so long, running from the pain, running from the memories. And now standing here with Caleb, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. But I wasn't ready. Not yet. Not until I knew whether this man, this cowboy, was truly different from all the others who had come before him. So I turned away from him, my heart still heavy with doubt. "Tomorrow," I said, my voice barely a whisper, "I'll know if you're truly different, if I can trust you." And with that, I disappeared into the trees, leaving Caleb standing in the rain, his words hanging in the air, unanswered. I didn't know then what he would become in my life, but I knew this: I couldn't trust him yet, not fully, not until I saw whether he would stand by me when the storm finally passed. As I moved through the dark, I couldn't shake the feeling that my life had just changed. That somehow, this man, Caleb Sterling, had just become a part of my journey. How, I didn't know. But I would find out soon enough. I couldn't shake the feeling of doubt, not after everything I had seen, everything I had lost. Caleb Sterling had saved me, yes, but could I trust him? The same question gnawed at my mind, repeating itself in the back of my head like an endless drumbeat. He had pulled me from the river, risking his life in the storm, but what did that really mean? In my world, nothing was ever free. Nothing came without a price. So why had he saved me? Was he truly different from the rest? Or was this just another man pretending to be something he wasn't, luring me in, setting a trap I couldn't escape? "Why did you save me?" I asked him one evening, my voice cold, the question heavy between us. "You could have let me drown. No one would have blamed you." Caleb looked at me, his eyes searching mine, as if trying to understand the weight of my words. He didn't seem to flinch, but I could see the subtle twitch of his jaw, the way his hands tightened around his rifle. I couldn't help but watch every movement, waiting for something, for a lie, for the betrayal I was sure was coming. "I couldn't just let you die," he said, his voice low and steady. "I don't know why. Maybe it's just the right thing to do." The right thing. His words should have been comforting, but instead, they left me with more questions. What did that even mean? Was it really just the right thing? Or was there more to his actions? Was it just a way to make himself feel good, to ease the guilt of not acting? I didn't know. I didn't know anything anymore. I could feel my heart heavy with suspicion. The world had taught me to never trust a man who said he wanted to help. The people I had trusted, my people, had been taken from me because of kindness, because they had trusted those who never should have been trusted. But Caleb, he was different. He hadn't asked for anything in return. He hadn't demanded anything. And that small difference, that flicker of decency in him, began to chip away at the walls I had built around myself. Still, I couldn't just throw away my caution, couldn't let my guard down too soon. I spent days keeping my distance, watching him, waiting for him to make a mistake, waiting for him to prove me right. I had to be sure. I couldn't make the same mistake again. I couldn't afford to. And yet, I kept seeing him. I kept seeing him fight for us. It was subtle at first. He would take care of the horses, keep watch during the night, making sure we stayed safe. He never complained, never asked for anything. He never treated us like we were lesser. He treated me like a person, not a stranger. That was something I hadn't had in a long time. One night, after a long day of travel, we sat around the fire, the crackling of the flames the only sound between us. I was still cold, my bones tired from running, but I couldn't sleep. "You don't have to do this," I said, breaking the silence. "You don't have to help us. You could leave and never look back." He looked at me then, his face lit by the firelight, his expression unreadable for a moment. Then he shook his head slowly, like he was still trying to figure something out himself. "I know," he said, his voice quieter than usual. "But I can't just walk away. I've seen too much. I've done too many things that I regret." His eyes met mine then, and for the first time, I saw something else in them. It wasn't just the rugged cowboy I'd been avoiding. It was a man who was carrying the weight of his own choices. I wanted to believe him, but could I? "I've lost people too," I said, almost to myself. "I've lost everything. My family, my land, my home, all gone. Taken by the same people who think they own everything." His face softened, and he nodded slowly. He understood more than I thought. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I didn't know. I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I just want to help." I looked at him, my heart twisting in my chest. He wasn't asking for anything. He was just offering what he could. But could I accept that? Could I trust him enough to let him be part of something that had been torn apart for so long? "I don't know if I can trust you," I admitted, my voice barely a whisper, my eyes not meeting his. "But maybe I have to." The fire crackled between us, and for the first time, I didn't feel the weight of my doubt as heavily. It was still there, but it wasn't as suffocating as before. Maybe trust wasn't something I had to give all at once. Maybe I could start small, see what happened. He didn't respond immediately, but when he did, there was a gentleness in his voice that made my chest tighten. "You don't have to trust me all at once," he said. "But maybe, just maybe, we can take it one step at a time." And in that moment, something shifted inside me. I had been so focused on survival, so focused on keeping my walls up, that I had forgotten what it felt like to stand with someone, to fight for something other than just myself. I still didn't trust him completely, but I couldn't deny the connection between us. I had to give him that much. He had saved me. He had fought for us. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to start building something new. "All right," I said, my voice steady, despite the uncertainty still lingering in my heart. "We'll take it one step at a time." And for the first time in a long time, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, there was still hope. The ground trembled beneath our feet, the air thick with tension. I could hear the horses before I saw them, hooves pounding the earth, the soldiers closing in, their voices barking orders like wolves hunting prey. My heart raced, but I kept my eyes steady, scanning the horizon, watching as the dust cloud grew larger. They were coming. I glanced at Caleb standing beside me, rifle in hand, his face grim. He had no idea what he was about to face. He had no idea what it meant to fight for your life, for your people, for everything you had left. "Are you ready?" I asked, my voice low, tight with uncertainty. The question wasn't just about the fight, it was about him. I knew he wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a warrior. And yet, here we were, standing side by side, preparing to face a war neither of us had wanted. Caleb's eyes met mine, and for the first time since this madness had started, I saw something in him I hadn't seen before. It wasn't fear, it wasn't hesitation, it was resolve, a silent promise that he wasn't going to back down. "I didn't choose this," he said, his voice steady. "But I'm not running, not now." In that moment, something shifted inside me. The last of my doubts started to fade, replaced by something else, something stronger. I wasn't sure if I could fully trust him, but I knew one thing for sure: he was standing with us. The soldiers were too close now. We didn't have time to hesitate. I turned to the women, Apache women, my sisters, who had been with me through everything. The fight was in their eyes, the same fight I saw in the mirror every day. They had nothing left but each other, and now they had to fight for survival. "We stand together," I shouted, my voice cutting through the chaos. "We fight or we die." Without a word, the women moved into position, ready to defend what was theirs. I felt Caleb at my side, rifle ready, his fingers steady despite everything. I didn't know if he could handle this, but the fight wasn't about him or me. It was about us. It was about survival. The first wave of soldiers burst through the trees, their rifles raised. The air exploded with gunfire. I took my shot, watching the soldier in front of me drop to the ground, his body hitting the dirt with a sickening thud. The women beside me didn't hesitate. They fought like they'd been born to do it, their movements fluid, instinctive. They weren't afraid. They were angry. I felt a sharp sting in my side, but I didn't stop. I kept firing, kept moving, kept fighting. The soldiers didn't understand what they were up against. They thought we were just women. They thought they could take us easily. They were wrong. The fight raged on, chaotic and brutal. I could hear the cries of the fallen, the sound of rifles echoing in the trees. I felt the weight of it all, the weight of every bullet fired, every life lost. And then the worst happened. Two of the women, my sisters, fell. One shot through the chest, the other hit in the leg. They didn't scream, they just fell, their bodies hitting the earth like stones. I ran to one of them, cradling her in my arms, my hands shaking with the shock of what had just happened. "Stay with me," I cried, but her eyes were already glazing over, the life draining from her in the midst of the battle. "Please, don't go," I whispered, my voice breaking, but she was already gone. I looked at the second woman, her body lying lifeless in the dirt. My heart ached with the loss, the pain of knowing we had just lost two of our own. "We've lost them," I whispered, the words breaking my resolve. "But we can't stop now." Caleb stood beside me, his hand on my shoulder. I didn't know what to say to him, but I didn't need to. He understood. We all did. I stood up, wiping the tears from my eyes, and looked out over the battlefield. The soldiers were retreating. We had won, but the cost was too high. "We won," I muttered to myself, my voice hoarse. "But at what cost?" I could still hear the wind howling, the cries of our fallen sisters, the sound of the battle fading into the distance. My heart felt heavy with the weight of the loss. The victory didn't feel like a victory. It felt like a hollow reminder of everything we had sacrificed. But even as I stood there, staring at the blood-soaked ground, I knew one thing: we hadn't given up. And we would keep fighting, because that's all we had left. As the dust settled and the soldiers retreated, I knew that our lives, our future, had been changed forever. We had paid the price for survival, and now we had to move forward, carrying the weight of the ones we lost. The journey wasn't over, the war wasn't over, but we were still here, and as long as we were still breathing, we would keep fighting. I looked at Caleb, his face stained with dirt and blood, but there was something else in his eyes now, something I hadn't seen before: respect. He didn't say anything, but I didn't need him to. I understood. He had earned his place with us. "Let's go," I said, my voice firm, despite the exhaustion in my body. We move forward, together. And we did. Because we had to. We had no other choice. The dust was thick in the air as we stood there, the battlefield littered with bodies, both ours and theirs. The smell of blood, sweat, and gunpowder hung heavy around us, mixing with the distant scent of rain that couldn't quite wash away the chaos. The fight was over. The soldiers had retreated, but the victory felt hollow, tainted by the losses we had suffered. Two of our own were gone. Their blood was still fresh on the ground, and the weight of their absence pressed down on me like a stone. I looked at Caleb standing beside me, his expression unreadable. The fire from the battle still burned in his eyes, but there was something else there now. Something that hadn't been there before. Something that made me wonder if just maybe I had been wrong all along. I had spent so long doubting, so long hiding behind the walls I had built to protect myself from a world that had taken everything from me. I had sworn I would never trust again. I had convinced myself that no one was worthy of my trust. Not after everything I had lost, not after the betrayals, the bloodshed. But now, standing next to Caleb, I realized the truth of it. I had been wrong. The storm inside me settled for the first time in years. The anger, the fear, the suspicion, it all started to fade. The walls I had built, the armor I had wrapped around my heart, started to crumble, and for the first time, I didn't feel so alone. I took a step towards him, my hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from something I couldn't name. I had spent so much time wondering if he was a part of the world that had hurt me, but now I saw something different. Caleb was standing here with us, fighting alongside us. "Caleb," I said, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. He turned to look at me, his face worn from the fight, his eyes tired but steady. I paused, struggling to find the right words, the words that felt right after everything. "I've been wrong," I said, the words slipping out, heavier than I expected. "I thought I couldn't trust anyone anymore. But today, I've seen something different." His gaze softened just a little, and I could see the flicker of understanding in his eyes. "You don't have to trust me," he said quietly, his voice rough. "I never asked you to. I'm just here, Ayana. I'm here because it's what's right. Because you're not alone anymore." I didn't know what to say to that. He didn't ask for anything in return. He didn't expect my trust, but he had earned it anyway. And that realization hit me harder than the weight of the guns, the smoke, the battle itself. "Thank you," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for saving me. Not just for pulling me out of that river, but for staying, for not leaving us when things got tough." He nodded, his jaw tight, but I saw something shift in him, something that told me he understood the gravity of what I was saying. "I didn't know what I was doing," he said, looking away for a moment. "But I couldn't leave you. None of us could have made it through that without each other." I swallowed, the lump in my throat threatening to choke me. I had been running for so long, fighting alone for so long, that I forgot what it felt like to stand with someone else. But Caleb had shown me that even in the darkest times, even when trust seems impossible, there's always a chance for something different. I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time, I saw him not as a stranger, but as a man who had proven himself by his actions. He wasn't just the cowboy who had pulled me from the river. He was the man who stood beside me when I needed him most, and that was worth more than anything else. "I'm sorry," I whispered, my voice barely a breath. "I was wrong to doubt you." He shook his head, a small smile tugging at his lips, though his eyes remained serious. "There's nothing to apologize for. You had every reason to doubt me, but you don't have to anymore." I couldn't help the smile that tugged at the corner of my mouth. It wasn't much, but it was something. I felt a shift inside me, a lightening of the burden I had been carrying for so long. "We still have a long way to go," I said, my voice steady now. "But for the first time in a long time, I'm not afraid of what comes next." Caleb didn't answer right away, but the look in his eyes told me everything I needed to know. We were in this together now, for better or worse. The other women were gathering around, tending to the wounded, preparing for what was next. But I knew that, no matter what happened, we had made it through this fight together, and that, in itself, was a victory. I turned back to the battlefield, my heart still heavy with the loss of our sisters. But it was lighter now, too. Because I knew we weren't alone. Caleb had shown me that. And sometimes, that's all it takes. A simple act of kindness. A simple choice to trust. "Thank you," I whispered to the wind, to the land, to everything that had brought us here. For the first time in so long, I could finally say it and mean it. We were not alone. The battle was over, but the scars it left were still fresh. The ground beneath our feet was soaked with blood, the cries of the fallen still ringing in my ears. 2 of our women were lost, their bodies now buried in the earth that had once been their home. It was a victory, but it felt like a hollow one. The price of survival had been steep, and as I looked around at the others, I couldn't shake the feeling that we hadn't won everything. Caleb stood next to me, his face covered in dirt and sweat, his hands still trembling from the battle. The storm had passed, but there was a new kind of storm in the air, the storm of uncertainty. The future ahead of us was unclear. But for the first time, we weren't alone in it. I turned to him, my voice softer than usual. "You saved us. You stood with us." My words felt heavier than I intended. I never thought I'd say this, but thank you. He looked at me, the weight of the battle still heavy in his eyes, but there was something else there too, a quiet strength that wasn't there before. "We all fought," he said, his voice rough but steady. "And we're still here. We made it through because we stood together." His words held truth. It wasn't just me. It wasn't just him. It was us. The world had thrown everything at us, but we had survived. And in that survival, something changed. Something I couldn't quite put into words yet. Maybe I didn't have to. Maybe it was something we could build together. "Maybe you're right," I said, my voice a little distant as I looked at the other women. "We stood together. And maybe that's what we need to keep doing." Caleb didn't say anything at first, but I saw the way his eyes softened when he looked at me. He understood. We weren't enemies anymore, not like I had believed we were. I had spent so much of my life seeing the world in black and white, them versus us. But Caleb, he had shown me something different. He wasn't the enemy, and neither was the world, not all of it. The days after the battle were quiet. We tended to the wounded, buried the dead, and did what we could to rebuild. The weather had cleared, and the sun beat down on the land, warm and steady, but there was something new in the air, a feeling of possibility, of change. It wasn't just the land that was healing, it was us. As the days went on, Caleb and I spoke more. At first, it was awkward, as though we were both afraid to speak the truth, to admit that something was shifting between us. But slowly, we began to talk about everything, our pasts, our fears, our hopes for the future. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the camp, I sat beside him. The fire crackled in front of us, the warmth of it soothing after the long day of work. "I didn't think I could trust you," I admitted quietly, the words slipping out before I could stop them. "I didn't think I could trust anyone anymore." Caleb turned to me, his eyes searching mine, and I saw the understanding there. "I know," he said, his voice low, "but I didn't ask you to trust me, Ayana. I just wanted to be here, to help." And I realized in that moment that I didn't have to trust him all at once. Trust wasn't something that came with a single act. It was something that built, slowly, over time. And sometimes, it didn't come at all. Sometimes you had to take a leap. "You've shown me something," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Something I didn't think was possible. Maybe we can build something together." Caleb smiled, but it wasn't a smile of victory. It was something softer, something more real. "We already have," he said, his voice steady. "We're still standing. That's something." We were standing together, and that was enough for me to know we could keep going. Whatever came next, we could face it as a unit, as one, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid. The days turned into weeks, and slowly, things began to settle. Caleb and I worked alongside the other women, making sure the wounds of the past didn't bleed into the future. We found a rhythm, a balance between the old ways and the new, between the two cultures that had once been at war with each other. But there was still so much to do. The world wasn't done with us yet, and we weren't done with it either. One morning, as we sat around the fire, planning the next steps, I realized something. The future wasn't something we were waiting for. It was something we were building, together. "Do you ever wonder," Caleb asked, his voice low, "what would have happened if we hadn't made it out of that fight, if we hadn't stood together?" I looked at him, seeing the quiet question in his eyes. "I think about it sometimes," I said. "But then I remind myself that it's not the past we have to worry about. It's the future we're making now." Caleb nodded slowly, and we both looked around at the others. The women, our sisters, our allies, were working together, building the future alongside us. The tribes were slowly learning to trust one another, and though the road ahead was long, I could see the possibility of something better. "We're not alone anymore," I said, my voice firm. "And we never will be again." He smiled then, his eyes softening with something like hope. "No," he said, "we're not." And with that, I knew we had made it. We had found something that wasn't just about survival. It was about building, about growing, and about creating something that had the potential to change everything. Because sometimes, when you stand together, you don't just survive, you thrive, and that's what we were going to do. Together. We had come a long way. The battle, the sacrifices, the loss, it all seemed like a distant memory now, but the scars it left on our hearts would never fade. As I looked at Caleb standing beside me, I knew we had made a choice that would change everything, not just for us, but for both our worlds, the world of the settlers and the world of the tribes. I had spent so much of my life running, hiding, fighting against a world that didn't want us to exist. But in Caleb, I saw something I hadn't seen in anyone else. Hope. Hope that we could change the course of history, that we didn't have to keep fighting, that we could find a way to coexist. But it wasn't going to be easy, I knew that. Our decisions, the decisions we had made in the heat of battle, would shape the future. This path we walked together would lead to things we couldn't even imagine yet. As we stood there, I realized something deep within me. I couldn't go back to the way things were. The past had been filled with too much pain, too much loss. We couldn't change that. But we could change what came next. "We've chosen this path," I said, my voice steady but filled with weight. "And it will lead us to changes we can't even understand yet." Caleb nodded, and for a moment we stood in silence, knowing that the future was uncertain, but also knowing we had the power to shape it. "So, I ask you, as we move forward from here, what will you choose? Will you stand together, or will you let the world tear us apart? The choice is yours, and the decision you make today could change everything. Choose the path of peace. Choose the path of unity. It's the only way forward. Let's walk it together." Life is full of moments where we are faced with choices that shape not only our future, but the futures of those around us. The story of Ayanna and Caleb teaches us one of the most important lessons we can learn in life: the power of trust and the impact of our decisions. The struggles they faced, fighting to survive, learning to trust, and ultimately choosing unity, serve as a mirror for our own struggles in life. One of the most powerful aspects of Ayanna's journey is how she learns to trust again. She had been hurt, she had been betrayed, she had every reason to distrust everyone around her, especially Caleb, a man from a world that had taken so much from her people. And yet, through her willingness to face her fears and the courage to step forward, she learned something powerful. Trust is not always about what's in front of us, but about choosing to believe in what could be. This story forces us to ask ourselves, how often do we let past pain and betrayal cloud our judgment? How often do we choose to walk alone because we fear trusting someone new or someone who isn't from our world? In doing so, we miss the opportunity for connection, for healing, for growth. Ayanna could have turned her back on Caleb, but she chose to take a chance. She chose to see the possibility of a new beginning instead of being consumed by the darkness of her past. And in doing so, she changed her life forever. The lesson here is clear. Life doesn't always go as planned, and sometimes we're thrown into situations where we feel powerless. But it's in these moments that we can choose to change our fate. Just like Ayanna, we must decide whether to hold on to our pain or open ourselves to the possibility of healing through trust. It's about choosing to believe in something better, even when it feels impossible. The path to healing, to change, is never easy. It requires sacrifice, it requires vulnerability, but it's in those moments of discomfort that growth happens. When Ayanna made the choice to trust Caleb, it wasn't just about saving her life in that moment. It was about saving her future. It was about breaking free from the chains of fear and doubt that had bound her for so long. In our own lives, we too face moments where we have to decide whether to trust or turn away, whether to stand together or fall apart. We all encounter these decisions, whether in personal relationships, our careers, or even in our communities. The question is, what will we choose? Will we let fear and past wounds define our future, or will we make the brave choice to trust, to connect, to move forward? If Ayanna and Caleb can find a way to trust, despite everything they've been through, then so can we. It's not about forgetting the past, it's about learning from it. It's about recognizing that in this world, we don't have to face everything alone. There are people willing to walk beside us, to fight with us, and together we can build something better. So, as you reflect on your own life, think about the choices you're making. Are you holding on to pain, or are you ready to let go and embrace the possibility of something new? Do you trust enough to walk beside someone, even if their path is different from yours? These are the decisions that shape our lives. They shape the lives of those around us, and they determine the world we create for future generations. Now I want to leave you with this question. What will you choose today? Will you stay stuck in fear, or will you choose to trust, to heal, to grow? The path of change isn't easy, but it's the only way forward. It's time for us to make that choice, just like Ayanna did. So, if you're ready to step into that new path, to choose trust over fear, share this video, leave a comment below about how you're going to trust and move forward, and make sure you hit the like button. Choose the path of healing and change, and let's walk it together. Let's make today the day we choose peace over division, unity over separation, and trust over fear. The future is in our hands. Let's choose wisely.